The Browns should cut Shedeur Sanders today. Shedeur is not ready, and his attitude is horrendous.
Right now, 16.7 points per game in the 7 starts that he had, 29th out of 32 teams, 59% completions, 26th among 30 qualifiers, 7 interceptions, worst in the NFL interception percentage-wise.
I think the biggest thing that we want to see from Shedeur is just continued growth. So the biggest thing that he can do is learn the new offense, get in with the coaching staff once our offseason program starts.
I don't think Shedeur long-term is your answer, but if you're asking me week 1 on September 12th with either starting quarterback, where else are they going? So probably be him.
Yep. The Cleveland Browns are a mess, a certified, full-blown, no way to sugarcoat it disaster zone. And right now, sitting right in the middle of that disaster, trying to make something work, trying to prove everybody wrong, is Shedeur Sanders, a young quarterback who came in with the hype, the name, the swag, and the pedigree. A kid whose father is one of the most electric personalities in football history. A kid who the NFL world watched closely throughout the entire draft process. And right now, the situation unfolding around him in Cleveland is not just bad. It's borderline criminal for a young quarterback trying to develop.
All starting from their offensive line are free agents. They literally have no starting offensive line right now, as we speak of. That is a bleak situation if you're the Cleveland Browns, regardless of who plays the quarterback position right now.
Bleak, that's the word, and it's the right one. This isn't a minor issue you can patch with a mid-round draft pick and a prayer. This is a 5-alarm fire. A crisis that demands urgent, aggressive, expensive action in free agency and the draft. And even then, there's no guarantee you fix it properly in one offseason. Now imagine you're Shedeur Sanders. You're a young quarterback still learning the nuances of the pro game, still adjusting to the speed, the complexity, the defensive schemes that NFL coordinators have spent decades perfecting. You need time. You need rhythm. You need to plant your feet, breathe, and go through your reads without a 280-pound defensive end exploding into your chest every single snap. Last season, Shedeur was under pressure on a league-high 51% of his dropbacks. More than half the time, over half the time he dropped back, someone was in his face. And Stephen A. Smith broke down exactly what that looked like in cold, brutal numbers.
Under pressure, a league-high 51% of his dropbacks. So he was out there running for his life more than half the time. And in that span, he only completed 42% of his passes. 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and 23 sacks under pressure.
That is not a Shedeur Sanders problem. That is a Cleveland Browns organizational problem that has been failing quarterbacks for decades. But here's the cold truth. Context doesn't win football games. Results do. And those results, ugly as they are in context, are the reality of what Cleveland is working with right now. But here's where it gets even messier, because the Browns aren't just dealing with an offensive line crisis, they're dealing with a receiver room that is genuinely one of the weakest in the entire league for a team that supposedly has a starting caliber quarterback they're trying to build around. Jeudy, that's the guy. That's the projected #1 wide receiver for Shedeur Sanders heading into this season. And the reaction from the analyst community has been exactly what you'd expect. Stephen A. didn't hold back.
They don't have any offense.
No.
They got no receivers. Their running back got hurt at the end of the year. Their offensive line's a mess. The tight end's good, but they have no offense.
No offense. Full stop. You draft a quarterback in the first round, you talk about building around him, you talk about giving him a real chance, and your best receiver is Jeudy, a guy who has never been a true, consistent #1 option at the NFL level. Meanwhile, contending teams are pairing their quarterbacks with elite weapons, building complete offensive ecosystems, and Cleveland is handing Shedeur a tin can and a prayer. And then there's the front office situation, because this chaos didn't happen in a vacuum. This was built, brick by brick, bad decision by bad decision over years of organizational dysfunction that starts at the very top. The Deshaun Watson contract, $230 million guaranteed. And Stephen A. laid out exactly how damaging that decision has been for everyone involved.
He comes to Cleveland and it's damn near look like he forgot how to play football. It's just that bad. And you signed him to $230 million guaranteed, which reset the market and caused all kinds of trepidation.
$230 million guaranteed for a quarterback who forgot how to play football. That money is still on the books. That cap damage is still suffocating the franchise. That decision, pushed through under ownership against the better judgment of anyone with functioning football instincts, is still the anchor around this organization, and Shedeur Sanders is the one left holding the bag. The decision to bring in Watson didn't just cost money, it cost years, it cost draft capital, it cost the organizational credibility needed to attract free agents who actually believe in what you're building. And now, with a new GM trying to clean up the wreckage, the Browns are attempting a full rebuild, all while expecting a young quarterback to somehow rise above generational level roster dysfunction. Now let's talk about the actual football, because the numbers, when you strip away context, are rough, and that's being kind. Stephen A. went full forensic accountant on First Take, reading the stats one by one like a prosecutor building a case.
73 passer rating, 29th among 30 qualifiers. 36% success rate, 29th among 30 qualifiers. Now, the legitimate argument can be made that you got to give him somebody to throw it to. You got to give him some weapons.
7 starts, 73 passer rating, 36% success rate, completion percentage at 59%, scoring offense ranked 29th in the league during those 7 games. These are not the numbers of a quarterback asserting himself. These are the numbers of a player drowning in impossible circumstances, week after week, against NFL defenses that had every single advantage. Now, and this is absolutely critical, you cannot evaluate those numbers without understanding the full picture. The offensive line was a revolving door. The receivers weren't getting open. The run game was unreliable. Shedeur was manufacturing offense out of absolutely nothing every single week. And even Stephen A., who laid out every damning stat, acknowledged the legitimate counterargument. You cannot evaluate a quarterback fairly when you refuse to acknowledge what he's working with. But here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud. Context doesn't win games. Results do. And right now, the results don't give you enough to bang the table and declare Shedeur Sanders a franchise cornerstone. So, what does GM Andrew Barry actually think? That's the question burning through every Cleveland Browns conversation right now. And his public answer, carefully crafted, deliberately vague, might be the most revealing thing about Shedeur's situation. Barry talked about wanting to see continued growth. He talked about Shedeur learning the new offense and getting in with the coaching staff. Standard front office language, safe, measured. And the Browns media world completely overreacted to it, reading trade signals into plain organizational caution. But the Keep the Vision channel pushed back on that narrative directly.
Andrew Barry wasn't addressing anything to you. He's not going to tell you or show his hand. He ain't going to do that. He's going to look at all the quarterbacks. He's definitely going to tell you that because that's his job.
Fair point. Barry isn't going to tip his hand publicly. That's just smart front office management. But from Shedeur's perspective, from a locker room culture standpoint, hearing your own GM dance around your name at the NFL Combine when you did everything asked of you, when you clawed your way from 4th string to starter, when you played through the most hostile offensive environment in the league, that has to sting. And now the draft drama adds an entirely new and deeply alarming layer, because the Browns are sitting at number 6 overall, a premium position, premium value, and they're openly discussing trading down, trading away the chance to land a true number 1 wide receiver, trading away the chance to grab a top-tier offensive tackle, trading away the infrastructure that Shedeur desperately, urgently needs around him. The Keep the Vision channel broke this down with the kind of passion that only comes from actually caring about what this means for a young quarterback's career.
And you need to improve this wide receiver room. If you're not trading for A.J. Brown, if you're not doing some big splash move like that to get Shedeur Sanders a legitimate wide receiver 1, if you trade down, if you trade out of number 6, you're not getting a legitimate number 1 potential wide receiver.
Nasty work. That's exactly what it is. Correll Tate, Jordan Tyson, these are legitimate difference makers, the kind of players who can genuinely change a young quarterback's career trajectory, the kind of player Shedeur has never once had the luxury of throwing to in Cleveland. And the Browns are sitting here contemplating trading past them for extra picks that may or may not pan out. By the time they're selecting at 24 with the Jacksonville pick, those receivers are gone. The top tackles could be gone. You're picking up the scraps of a draft class that analysts are already calling one of the weakest in recent memory for offensive skill positions. The math is brutal and the window is narrow. And then there's the Malik Willis conversation swirling in the background like a storm cloud that refuses to move. The idea that the Browns could bring in the former Packer backup and essentially push Shedeur to the margins, create a genuine competition, send a message. And analysts who've watched the film closely have a very specific take on what that would actually mean for Shedeur's future in Cleveland.
But I hate the idea that if you get Malik Willis, I think that shuts the door on Shedeur Sanders. Don't love that development. But I don't love the idea of spending capital that you desperately need to upgrade this team on Ty Simpson.
The money required to sign Willis would also eat straight into a cap that needs to fund an entirely new offensive line. You cannot do both. You cannot sign an expensive backup-turned reclamation project quarterback and rebuild a catastrophically broken offensive line at the same time. The cap space simply does not exist. This is the reality of Shedeur Sanders' situation right now. No offensive line, a weak receiver room, a GM who won't fully commit publicly, an owner with a history of organizational interference, draft strategy that could leave him without the weapons he needs, and external quarterback options being floated in the media every single week like clockwork. He came to Cleveland with something to prove. He still has everything to prove. And the organization around him is making that task exponentially, almost incomprehensibly harder than it ever needed to be. The kid deserves better. The situation demands better. And right now, from every angle you look at it, better is nowhere in sight.